Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to completely rethink how we actually get things done. We're going to deconstruct some massive myths and look at the behavioral science to uncover what truly keeps us moving forward when the going gets tough. Spoiler alert, it's probably not what you think. So let's dive right in with a question worth asking. Is motivation overrated? I mean, let's face it, motivation has totally become the celebrity of this self-improvement world. We talk about it as if it's the magical secret ingredient behind literally every success story out there. But is it really? Or is giving motivation all this credit actually holding us back? The truth is, motivation is wildly misunderstood. We culturally expect it to be this endless well of energy, always ready to strike the second we need it. But the reality? Motivation is emotional. It rises and falls depending on your mood, your stress level, your confidence, and sometimes, honestly, whether you've simply had enough sleep. Some mornings you wake up ready to conquer the world, right? But other days, just getting out of bed feels like a major accomplishment. If your progress depends entirely on motivation, well, your progress will always be inconsistent because our emotions are inconsistent. And that inconsistency creates a really sneaky problem I like to call the procrastination trap. Think about it. Every January, people wait for that New Year motivation to strike before joining the gym. Writers wait for inspiration before opening a blank page. Entrepreneurs wait until they feel ready to launch their business. We tell ourselves, oh, I'll start when I feel motivated. But tomorrow becomes next week becomes next month. And before long, waiting for motivation just quietly becomes a form of procrastination. We literally mistake waiting for preparation. There's this great insight from Peachtree Comprehensive Health that hits the nail on the head. They basically say that expecting to be motivated is setting yourself up for failure. The problem isn't that you lack motivation. The problem is being too dependent on it to get started. Demanding that your brain maintain a hyper-motivated state 24/7, that's just biological fiction. To understand what actually gets us moving, we have to look at the science of drive. Back in the 1950s, a psychologist named Frederick Herzberg developed what he called the two-factor theory. He interviewed tons of professionals and discovered something fascinating. The things that make us genuinely driven are completely independent from the things that make us dissatisfied. Herzberg split this into two buckets. First, you have hygiene factors. Think salary, job security, decent working conditions. If you don't have these, you're going to be absolutely miserable. But simply getting a paycheck doesn't magically make you passionate about your work. It just stops you from quitting. Herzberg actually called this movement, not motivation. True motivators are things like challenging work, recognition, and personal growth. Those are the things that genuinely pull us forward. Bringing this into a more modern light, we have self-determination theory. Imagine your drive exists on a spectrum. On the far end, you've got external regulation. You're doing something just because you're forced to or for a reward. It feels controlling, right? But as you move across the spectrum, motivation becomes internalized. You act because it aligns with your values or because you actually find it intrinsically satisfying. The ultimate goal isn't just to get motivated, but to shift from external pressure to internal desire. So how do we actually internalize that drive? Well, we have to satisfy three basic psychological needs. Number one is autonomy, feeling like you have a choice and you're acting willingly. Number two is competence, feeling capable of handling a challenge. And number three is relatedness, feeling a sense of connection or a broader purpose. When these three needs are met, you don't need a hype-up speech to get to work. The drive is already inside you. Which perfectly brings us to purpose. In the mission-built philosophy, purpose is the third layer of performance. Whether you're a powerlifter under a heavy bar or a software developer staring down a massive backlog of code, sheer willpower will eventually run out. Purpose is the deep why behind your work. It's what sustains your engine when the initial dopamine rush of a new project completely fades away. Look, even with a strong purpose, the day-to-day grind is tough. And that's why we have to talk about systems. James Clear has this famous quote, "You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems." Think about the people who seem incredibly successful. We often assume they're just way more motivated than everyone else. But in reality, many of them aren't. Healthy relationships don't thrive because people wake up feeling intensely loving every single day. They thrive because people consistently choose behaviors that strengthen the relationship, even when life gets super stressful. The system carries you. So, back to our big question. Is motivation overrated? Well, only if you expect it to do a job it was never meant to do. Motivation is just a spark. It gets the engine started. But discipline, habits, routines, those are the fuel and the steering wheel. Consistency is what actually gets you to your destination. The people who accomplish the most aren't always the most inspired. They're just the ones who've learned to keep moving long after the excitement wears off. And the best way to keep that vehicle moving is by turning behaviors into rituals. As they say, rituals compound, rules confine. A rigid rule tells you to do this exact thing or you fail, which is super brittle when you're exhausted. But a ritual bends with you. The gym doesn't become easier because you're highly motivated every day. You go because it's Tuesday, and Tuesdays are workout days. Okay, but what happens when real-world obstacles pop up and threaten those rituals? That is where a scientifically backed strategy called MCI comes in. It stands for Mental Contrasting with Implementation Intentions. Sounds fancy, but it's actually incredibly practical. Research shows that just sitting around positively visualizing your goals can actually decrease your effort. You don't just need a fantasy, you need a plan for when things get hard. Here's exactly how you do it. Step 1. Identify your desired future. What do you actually want? Step 2. Mentally contrast that with reality. Get brutally honest about the obstacles that might stop you. And step 3. Create a specific if-then action plan. Like, if I feel totally wiped out after work, then I will put on my workout clothes immediately anyway. You automate your response so you don't have to rely on motivation in the heat of the moment. The big takeaway here is that discipline isn't some genetic superpower reserved for the elite. It is a daily workhorse that absolutely anyone can cultivate. You break your goals down into bite-sized pieces. You build impossibly small habits. You pair hard tasks with things you enjoy, like a great playlist or a favorite coffee shop. You focus on the process, not perfection. And you find accountability partners to keep you on track. Which brings us to the ultimate paradox of human drive. We sit around waiting for motivation to inspire action. But the irony is that action creates motivation, not the other way around. Once you start cleaning the kitchen, it's easier to write that first messy paragraph. The second one usually comes a little easier. Momentum has a really funny way of generating the exact motivation you were waiting for. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this one thought. If we know that motivation is just a fleeting spark, what are you going to start doing today without waiting to feel ready? Don't wait for the spark. Build the engine. Start putting in the reps. Because at the end of the day, motivation might get you started, but consistency is what actually changes your life. Thanks so much for joining me today. See you next time.